Good evening, class, and welcome to our performance management class for today. Our topic for today is advanced variance analysis. In our previous classes, we treated the basic variances. We treated um, standard cost, the standard cost card, how the standards are used in creating a budget. We looked at a budget, which we call a fixed budget or the original budget. So we'll be looking at it as original budget. Then, after the budget was made using the standards, at the end of the period, we now have actual results, which we compared with the budget. And we found out that the budget and the actual results cannot be fairly compared because the level of activities probably are not the same. Probably the sales volume used in the budget is different from the actual sales, or perhaps the production volume in the budget is different from the actual. And so we now created the flexed budget or the flexible budget, which now stays between the original and the actual. So the flex budget is now bringing the original budget to the level of the actuals so that we can compare and get our cost variances. We then do the cost variances. We did the direct material variances, which we divided into usage and price. We saw how we derived it from standards and actual. Then we now converted the direct material variances to direct labor by changing the standard quantity to standard hours and standard price to standard rates. We now subdivided the labor variances into efficiency and rate variances. Then we then created the variable overhead variances, and we subdivided them into efficiency and expenditure. Then we then created the fixed variance, which we then subdivided into two: expenditure and volume. Then the volume variance was divided into two: efficiency and capacity. And so we looked at the fixed variance as three variances that we can sub variances we can get, where we have expenditure, efficiency, and capacity sits in between them. We then look at the sales variances. We have the sales price variances and the volume variance, which kind of affected the profit or the contribution. We then looked at making a reconciliation statement, which reconciles the original fixed budget with the actual results. Meanwhile, the flexed budget help us got the variances which we used in the reconciliation. And one of the questions we solved in the last class was a reconciliation statement question, and we saw how this was reconciled. Today, we are going to go to advanced variances. Now, let us see a brief of what we shall get in the advanced variances. We shall be looking at something called materials mix and yield variances. Then we're looking at sales volume, mix and quantity variance. Then, of course, the planning and operational variance. Then the market share and market size variance. Now, let's look at all of these now as we start our class. Now, let's look at materials, mixed and yield variances. When standard costing is used for products which contain more than one items of material, the total material usage variance can be calculated by calculating the individual usage variance in the usual way and adding them up. So what we mean here is if we are making a product and we use different materials, say material A, material B, and material C. Now let's say we're making soft drinks or we're making bread. Let's use bread as an example. We have the butter, we have the flour, we have the egg, we have the other ingredients. Now we must mix them together. So when we are using them, we have a standard quantity for each one of them. We don't use each of them equal proportion. And so that gives rise to something called mixed variances. So our usage variances, we can get the usage variances, each of them individually, and add them up like we did in one of the examples when we had material A and B. We did their usage variances separately. Now, we can also do a mixed variance together. Now look at this example here. Product X is produced from three direct materials, which is A, B, and C, that are mixed together in a process. The following information relates to the budget and output for the month of January. Now look at the standard cost for 1 unit. Now what it means is that for material A, B, and C, look at the quantity required for making each that one product. Then look at the standard price for the kilo, and this is the quantity for the kilos. So this is for standard quantity. This is standard cost to make 1 unit. Now look at the actual quantity that was used in making 200 units. So usage variance can be calculated in the normal way. Now let's see how we can do the usage variance. Let's look at it here. Let's say example 1. Let's call this example 1. Example 1. Okay, so we have usage variance. Direct material usage variance. Now, what's the formula? So I will say direct material usage variance is standard quantity, standard price minus actual quantity, standard price. Isn't it? That's what we learned, usage. Now, this can also be further um, simplified because standard price is common. So we can say standard price, standard quantity minus actual quantity. All right, so now let's look at material A. What is the standard price for material A? The standard price here is 1 kilogram. Eh, sorry, 20 naira for one per kilo. 20 naira per kilo. So that's the standard price. That's 20 naira. What is the standard quantity? The standard quantity here is 1 kilogram, and we did 200 units. So 1 kilogram, so you say 1 kg multiplied by 200 units. So that's the standard quantity. The actual quantity here happens to be 160 kilogram. So 160 kilogram, this is 160 kg. So this can be 20, 1 times 2, 1 times 200 gives us 200 minus 160. Now let me do it here. This is the same thing as saying 20 multiplied by 200 minus 160 is 40. So 20 times 40 gives you 800. So 800, is it favorable or adverse? It is favorable. That's favorable. So you can see that that's the 800 favorable you have here. Now let's look at material B. Material B, what is the standard price for material B? Standard price is 22 naira. So I'll come again. So this is 22. We are told we use 1 kilogram and we did 200 units. Now minus how many kilogram was used? 180 actual. 180 was used. So this is the same thing as 22, 200 minus 180, which is the same thing as 22, 20. 22 times 2 is 44. So that is going to be 440 favorable. So that's what you get here, is 440 favorable. Okay? Then material C. We have material C. What's the price? The price is 20. Um, the price here is 6 naira per unit. 6 naira per unit per kg. So, sorry, 6 naira per kg. 6 naira per kg. How many was used? 8 kg was used. Yes, that's 8 kg. And we did 200 units. So 8 kg times 200 units. Now, minus how many was the actual quantity used? 1,760. So this is 1,760 kg. So this is the same thing as saying 6, 1,600 8 times 2 is 16. 1,600 minus 1,760. So this is going to give us 6 multiplied by 160. 160 minus 160. That's minus 160. So 160 multiplied by 6. So we say 160 multiplied by 6. That gives me 960 adverse. So that is 960 adverse. So if you see here, this is the 960 adverse we have here. Now, if you want to check the total usage variance, so total direct material usage variance is material A plus material B plus material C. Of course, material C here is 960 adverse. This is 440 favorable, and this is 800. This is 800 favorable. So we already have 960 in our calculator. So let's add 440 and let's add 800. That gives us 280 favorable. So this gives us 280 favorable. So this is the total usage variance for this product. Right? Now, this is what we can get in usage variances. Look at substitute materials. If the materials are substitutable, that is, less of one type of material can be compensated for by more of another. So if you can substitute some materials with another material, that will mean that you can easily say that if one of them is not readily available, you can switch to the other. It then means that the direct material usage variance can be analyzed into material mixed variance and materials yield variance. Now, this is for substitute table materials. The total of these two variances is the total usage variance. So it means that just as we did material A, B, and C normally, if all these materials are substitutable, we can do yield and mix variance. It is vital to understand that this further analysis should only be performed if the materials can be substituted for each other. If we cannot substitute it, then we will not calculate mix and yield. We will just calculate the usage variances individually. Mix and yield variances have a useful meaning only when the proportion, or we can say the mix, of the different raw material in the final product can be varied and are subject to management control. Said if the mix or proportion can be varied and is subject to management control, then we can have a meaningful mix and yield variance. For example, in the above example we did, fewer kilogram of A were expected to make 200 units, but more of B and C. So if you look at it here, if you look at material A, we only required uh, 160 to make A, but look at B, we required 180, and C was much more. So fewer materials was required to make A as compared to B and C. Okay. In contrast, if the company manufactured a car, if a company manufactured a car, we cannot say that we can use tire to compensate for engine. We cannot compare tires and engine because they cannot be substituted for each other. That is what we are learning here. Substitutable materials are only suitable for the mix and yield variances. Now let's look at direct materials mix variance. Now the material mix variance measures how much the total usage variance is attributable to the fact that the actual combination of or mixture of materials that was used was more expensive or less expensive than the standard mixture of the material. You will get to see that. So this is how you can do a mix variance. The mix variance is calculated by doing the following. Take the total quantity of all the materials used in the example and calculate what the quantities of each material in the mix should be if the total usage had been in the standard proportion or standard mix. Compare the actual quantity with the standard mix. Okay, maybe we should use an example to do that. So when we finish this example, I'm going to give you a standard formula that or a standard method I use in doing mix and yield. Okay, so if you want to do mix variance, what do we do? Let's look at mix variance. We are assuming that these are standard material. This is direct material usage mix variance. This is mix variance. Now, normally we have standard, okay, sorry. We normally know that our usage variance is normally standard quantity, standard price minus actual quantity, standard price. That's usage variance. Okay. So what we will do now is see something here again. All right. At the center of them here, you will use standard mix. We'll use standard mix here. You will also use, come in. Yeah, you will use the standard mix here. Okay. You use the standard mix here for your standard quantity, standard price. For mixed variance, you use the standard mix. For yield variance, you will use the actual mix. Okay, so this is what we mean. We have material A, material B, material C. Okay, so we want to make 200 units. So this is standard quantity here. This is standard quantity. The standard quantity for material A happen to be 200 here. This is 200. For B, it's also 200. For C is 16. So this is 16. If you have to total them, 16, 18, this is 2000. This is 2000. Now, what is the standard mix? Standard mix. The standard mix here is 200 is what we used against a total of 2000. This is 200 over 2000. This is 16 over 2000, which gives us 0.1, which is like 10%, which is 0.1. This is 0.1. Then let's see what this will give us. 16 divided by 2000, that should be 0.8. So that is 0.8. So this is a standard mix here. As you can see, this is the standard mix, 80% or 0.8. Right? That's a standard mix. Okay? Now, this is a standard mix. Actual quantity. Actual quantity is now what we use now. Actual quantity here is 2100. Remember, we used 2000 to get the standard mix. Now we have 2100 as our quantity. If we have 2100 as our quantity, what will be the standard mix to get 2100 units? To get 2100. Let's look at it again. Actual, how do we get our actual? How did we get our actual? Look at our actual first of all. Look at our actual quantity. Our actual quantity, we used 160, 180, and 1760. We use 160, 180, 1760. These are these are kg. This is kg. This is kg. It should be kg. Now, if you look at this, we have 160 here plus 180 plus 1760. We have 2100. So we can't be comparing 2000 with 2100. So we have to flex this standard to reflect the actual. So it means that our standard quantity will be material A, material A, material B, and material C. Will be, this was 0.1 before, this is 0.1, and this is 0.8. So what we did the first time was to get the standard mix. After, the first thing is to get your standard mix, then we use it to multiply this actual quantity. So your standard quantity should be 210, 210. Let's see this times 0.8. This should be 1680. So we have 1680. So this is now your standard quantity. Remember, we said, normally we said standard price is common, and we have standard quantity minus actual quantity. Of course, we are checking our standard mix. So all we now need to do, this is our standard quantity, our actual quantity, of course, is 160, 180. This is 160, 180, 1760. So variance, this minus this. So 210 minus 160 gives us 50. This is 50. 210 minus 180, that gives us 30. Then here, 1680 minus 1760 gives us minus 80. Minus 80. Of course, we now have the selling price, standard price. What's the standard price? In the question, the standard price happened to be 20, 22, and 6. 20, 22, and 6. So you'll be multiplying. So this is your variance. This is where we now have the favorable and the adverse. So we have 50. Okay, let's do the minus 80 times 6. That gives me minus 480. So it's 480 adverse. 480 adverse. We have 30 times 22. That gives us 660 favorable. 660 favorable. And we have 50 multiplied by 20. That gives 1000 favorable. 1000 favorable. So we have 1000 favorable plus 660 favorable minus 480 adverse. That gives us 1180 favorable. 1180 favorable. That is what this has resulted. 1180 favorable. So that is your your mixed variance. What mixed variance is telling you here is that For each individual item of material, the mix variance is favorable when the actual mix is less than the standard mix. And the mix variance is adverse when the actual usage exceeds the standard usage. So you see here, this is the standard, this is the actual mix. It is different from the standard mix because for you to have done 2,100 in the standard way, you should have used 210 units of material. But in the actual, you now use 160. So it means that you use less than the standard, you got favorable. But in this case, you got adverse, you use more than the standard. So this is mix variance. So we are looking at standard mix. Look at it, standard mix. Then we convert the standard mix to compare the actual standard. Sorry, we use that. Look at standard quantity, standard mix. Sorry, is that so? No. We look at the standard mix and we look at standard actual quantity standard mix. This is what I would have said. Actual quantity standard mix. This is actual quantity standard mix. This is the standard, this is the standard mix we've got in here. We are using it with the actual quantity. So we have actual quantity standard mix and we are comparing it with actual quantity. It's like actual quantity, actual mix. So if you look at it now, it is actual quantity standard mix compared with actual quantity actual mix. Let's go to usage variance and yield variance. The direct material, the material yield variance is the difference between the actual yield from the inputs and the yield that the actual input should have given in standard terms. It indicates the effect on cost of the total material input yielding more or less than the expected. Okay, they say based on the above illustration, standard cost of each unit of output is 90 naira per 10 kilogram. Let's see what they are saying. I think we may need to look at this here. Standard cost is 90 naira for 10 kilogram. That's what they are saying. 90 naira for 10 kilogram, which is like 90 naira per kilogram. 90 naira, then 9 naira per kilogram. Then the standard cost of each unit of output is 90 naira per unit. This is like 90 naira per unit. So this is like 90 naira for 10 kilogram, which is like 9 naira per kilogram. And this is like 90 naira per unit. All right. Now, they said method one compares the actual yield to the expected yield from the material used. The difference is then valued at the standard cost of output. Okay, look at the example here. 2,100 kilogram of input, which is 10 kilogram per unit. If you look at it, this is 10 kilogram for 1 unit. So if you are doing 2,100 units, taking 10 kilogram per unit, 2,100 taking 10 kilogram per unit. So what it means is that 2,100 kilogram is available for you. Taking 10 kilogram per unit, you should be getting 210 units. So that's it. You should be getting 210 units. But how many units did we do? We did 200 units. So this is what we are expecting. If we are taking 10 kilogram for 1 unit, and we are making, if you are taking 10 kilogram and we have 2,100 units that was actually used, in the standard, this 10 to 2,100 should give us 210 units, but you actually use it for 200 units. It means that 10 was adverse. Then you multiply it by the standard cost, and that is your material yield variance. Now that's method one. Method two, this compares the actual usage to achieve the yield to the expected usage. So now look at what it means here. In the above example, 1 unit should use 10 kg of input. 10 kg of input. So it means that 10 kg of input yields 1 unit. Now, if you are making 200 units, how many inputs do you need? Simply say 10 multiplied by 200 should give you 2,000 kg. That is what it means. 2,000 kg is what you should have used to make 200 units. But now you use 2,100 units. So it's still 100 adverse. So when you now check how much per kilo, how much per kilo, we know how much per kilo. This is cost of 90 naira for 10 kilo. It means 9 naira per kilo. When you multiply it, you have 900 naira adverse. This is the same thing. So whether we use method one or method two, it will give us the same thing. Now in method one, let's look at it again. In method one, you look at how many kilos standard that we need for 1 unit. And we now said, if that is the standard for 1 unit, how many did we actually do? It means that how many kilos did we actually use? 2,100 kilos. So what is the standard unit that should come out from 2,100? It should be 210. But how many did come out? 200. That's where we look at it, the variance. Now the variance is 10 units. Now cost per unit is 90. In method two, we are looking at the individual inputs. We are saying that we did 200 units, and if we are supposed to do 10 kg per unit, if we did 200 units, we should have used 2,000 kg. How many did we use? 2,100 kg. And so in the individual, that particular material, we have used 100 above the standard, multiplied by the cost of that material, not the cost. This is like this one, and this is the cost of 1 unit of the final product. This is 1 unit of the input material. So this is the input method. This is the output method. All right. Now, if you look at the usage variance, we have mixed variance 1180, yield variance 900. When we add the favorable and less the adverse, we have 280. If you remember, 280 was our usage variance. So maybe we should put this thing down here so that we'll have it here. So let's say this is yield variance. Method 1, let's say input method. Okay, we know that 10 kg of input was used to make 1 unit of output. If we want to make 200 units of output, expected input, which is the standard quantity, should be 10 kg multiplied by 200 units, which is 2000 kg. Actual input, which is the actual quantity, is 2100 kg. So the actual is bigger than the expected. So variance is already 100 adverse. Variance input quantity. Now, if you bring the standard price, we said it's 90 naira divided by 10 kg, which is equal to 9 naira per kg. So 9 times 10 should give you, so I'll just say, sorry. So I'll just simply say I'll multiply by 9 naira, which gives me 900 adverse. That's method 1. Then I will say method 2, output method. So we said in the output method, we have standard quantity is 10 kg per unit, right? If we make an output If we make an output of 200 units, which is the actual, we should need, let's say, expected hope I'm not doing the same thing. Just a moment. Okay. The first one is input, then the second one is output. Okay. Okay. I was one mixing it. Okay. I get it. Standard quantity is 10 kilogram per unit. If we had 2,100 kg of input available, how many outputs should we get? So it means expected output should be 2,100 kg divided by 10 kg per unit. That will give you 210 units. Actual output, we had 200 units. That was our actual output. So when we less it, we had 10 units adverse. Then standard price per unit of output happens to be 90 naira. So we are going to multiply by 90, and that gives us 900 adverse. And so we say our direct material usage variance is equal to mix variance plus usage plus yield. Why do I keep saying usage? Mix variance plus yield variance. So our yield variance is 900 adverse, and this happened to be 180 favorable. So it will give us 280 favorable as we got before. So that's what this is helping us to know. So this is the summary, and this is a practice question. So let's see what we can do from this practice question to see if we got the point. So let's go here, practice question 1. So practice question 1. In the practice question 1 here, we are told to calculate the direct material mix and yield variances. We'll do something. We will add to that. We'll first of all calculate the usage variance. We'll calculate the usage variance. Then we'll calculate the mix and yield variance. So direct material, direct material usage variance. We said it was direct material usage variance is standard quantity, standard price minus actual quantity, standard price, which is the same thing as standard price, standard quantity minus actual quantity. Okay, so we will say material X, material Y. Okay, what is the standard price? 250, 300. 250, 300. 250, 300. What is the standard quantity? Of course, we made 72 units. Standard quantity here is 12 units, 18 units. 12 units, 18 units. So I will say 12, 18. Now multiply by 72. Is it 72? Yes, 72. Here multiplied by 72 units. Now minus, what is the actual quantities? 984, 1230. 984, 1230. So it means that this will give me, let's do it together. Let's do it together. We have 12 multiplied by 72. That gives me 864. So this place alone gives me 864. If I minus 864 minus, that is 984, that will give me negative 120. If I multiply negative 120 by 250, that will give me negative 30,000. So this is like 30,000 adverse. Adverse. And let's look at Y. We have 18 multiplied by 72. That gives me 1296. Now 1296, if you minus 1230, you have a positive number of 66. 66 multiplied by 300, that gives me 19,800. Favorable, 19,800 favorable. That's favorable. When you add these together, so we have 19,800 favorable, you adverse, you minus 30,000 adverse. You are getting 10,200 adverse. 10,200 adverse. So this is your direct material usage variance. Now, we are not asked to do this, but I know why I did this. So now let's go to our mixed variance. direct material usage mix variance. So now this is the mix variance. We go to, we have to first of all get the standard mix. So I will now say step one, standard mix. So this is material X, material Y, standard quantity, and this is the standard mix. So what is the standard quantity here? 12, 18. So we have 12 liters. This is 18 liters. Total is 30 liters. Now the standard mix should be 12 over 30, and this is 18 over 30. If you can simplify this further, you do it. If you cannot simplify it, you leave it that way. So let's say 12 divided by 30, that gives me 0.4 or 40%. This is 0.4. So that means 18 over 30 should give me 0.6. This is 0.6. So everything should give you 1. That is the essence here, step 1. Step 2, actual quantity used in inputs. What is the actual quantity used? 2,210. 2,210 and 214. So we have 2,214 liters. Step 3, standard mix for actual quantity. Standard mix for actual quantity. So what we have here, we have material X, material Y. Normally, we have 0.4. This is 0.6. Now we have multiplied by the actual quantity, 2,214. 2,214. So this is the expected input here. So for the person who was asking me to take it again, this question affords us opportunity to take it again. I have 0.6 in my calculator. If I multiply by 2,214, I have 1329. Should I use 1329? Okay. Let me use it the way it is here. 1328.4. 1328.4. Now let's do the second one. 2214 times 0.4. 885.6. 885.6. Now this is actual quantity standard mix. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to derive here. So what we are saying here is mix variance is actual quantity standard mix minus actual quantity standard mix. Actual quantity here is actual mix. Then there is a standard price. There's a standard price here. Standard price. Okay, so that is what this is basically saying, because we have used the actual quantity with standard mix. So what it then means is that material X, material Y. What is the actual quantity standard mix here? This is actual quantity standard mix. This is 885.6, and this is 132.8.4. Then actual quantity actual mix. So this is minus. The actual quantity actual mix here is 984.1230. 984.1230. If we are to add these two, the essence here, if we add this plus 1328.4. What did I do? 1, 2, 1, 3, sorry, 1328.4. The essence is to give us that 2214. The essence is to give us this total. So now, when you do them individually, let me say variance here. When you do them individually, 885.6 minus 984, that gives you minus 98.4. This is minus 98.4. Then this gives you 1328.4 minus 1230. That gives me 98.4. Yeah, it gives me 98.4. Okay, now look at the price. Standard price. What are the standard price of the actual quantities? The standard prices here are 250, 300. So here is 250, here is 300. So I'm multiplying. So I have this, I'll multiply by 300, and I got 29,520. So this is variance, 29,520. So this is your variance. So I have 98.4 multiplied by 250. I have 24,600. 24,600. This is adverse, this is favorable. When you less the adverse from the favorable, 29,520. That gives you 4920. 4920 favorable. And that's your mixed variance. Then we have yield variance. So how do we do our yield variance? We look at it now. Look at the price. 30 liters cost us 840, 8,400. So we say 30 liters cost 8,400 standard. That's one thing we also know. We also say 30 liters make 1 unit. We also say 30 liters made 1 unit output standard. All right. So if we had 2,204, 2,214 inputs, okay, liters inputs, we expect how many outputs? How many outputs? So that's what we mean. So we have 2,214 liters inputs divided by 30 liters per unit. That means we have 2,214 divided by 30. That should give us 73.8 units. 73.8 units. This is expected. Actual units made is how many? From the question, we made 72 units. 72 units. So the variance is 1.8 units. Now, standard price per unit. We said standard price per unit. What's the standard price per unit? This is the standard cost per unit, 8,400 for 1 unit of output. 8,400. So we multiply it by 8,400. So I'll just say multiplied by 8,400. And that will give us 1.8 multiplied by 8,400. That gives us 15,120 favorable. 15,120. 15,120 favorable. So this is still favorable. This is favorable. And this is your yield variance. Okay. And we say direct material usage variance is the same thing as mix plus yield variances. And your yield variances is 115, 120 favorable. Your mix was how many? 4, 4, 9, 20 favorable. 4, 9, 20. Okay. 4, 9, 20 favorable. So let's see if we can add them. We are keeping our fingers crossed. 4, 9, 20. That gives us 20,040. 20,040 favorable. I think we've done something wrong. We've done something wrong somewhere. Let's rectify it again. Let's look at the solution and rectify it from the solution. Okay, so we have 4,920 as before, 4,920 favorable, and we have 15,000. Oh, it's adverse. How did I get favorable? Okay, if we had 2,140, we are expecting, let's see how they got their adverse. It's still the same way now. They use input method, I use output method. We should have gotten the same thing. 2,400 inputs should give us 73.8, but actually it was 72. Now they did it the other way around. If we had 72, okay, let me use the way they did their own. Let's do it the way they did theirs. Let's do it down here. Let's do it down here. Yield variance reworked. So this is output method. Now we have 30 liters equal to 1 unit, right? We had 72 units. We had 72 units, 72 units produced. This will require how many kg to become 72 units multiplied by 30 liters. This is the expectation. 72 multiplied by 30. This should give you 2160. 2160 liters. So this is expected. Actual liters used How many was the actual liters used? 2214. 2214. 2214 liters. Okay, I see. This should be 2160 minus 2210. Okay, 2214, sorry. 2214. That should be 54. So let me change this one to 4. It should be 54 adverse. Then when you multiply standard price, standard price 8,400. When you multiply times 8,400, what did I do? It's not 8,400, sorry. Standard price per liter. Standard price per liter is not 8,400. It's supposed to be 8,400 divided by 30 liters. That's what I should have used. Let me now divide it by 30. Of course, it will give me the 15,200 adverse. But let me look at the price here. 15,120, not 200. 15,120. 15,120. So, but if you want to know the price, you simply say 8,400 divided by 30. That gives you 280. So 280 per liter. So this is it here. So that's it here. What I should have done here, trying to see the logic here. This is the output used. Actual output is that 72. Okay. You are expected. Oh, I get it now. You are expected to get 73, but you now got 72. You got short of what was expected. Okay. So this should have been adverse, not favorable. This should have been adverse. This should have been adverse because you didn't get more than what you got. If the actual was actual of what you were going to make was more than what you expect, it would have been favorable. But if what you're expecting to get is less than, is more than what you are actually getting, it's an adverse. But here, that is an input. Now let's look at the logic. In input, if you are expecting, okay, if your output, what you are expecting from output using the input method, if you're using the output method, what you are expecting as an output should be lower than what you actually get to get a favorable variance. If it is higher than what you actually got, it means you didn't get the expected. It is adverse. But look at input, is the reverse. If the input you use in the standard is a particular value, but you now need to put more input to get the same output, then it means it's an adverse. So that's it. We need to understand the knowledge here. So we now say direct material usage variance is mix plus yield. Your mix here, this is 15,120 adverse. This is 4,920 favorable. add them together. So 4,920, that's adverse, plus 15,120, that's favorable, 10,200. So that's 10,200 favorable. So even though you were not given this direct material usage variance, you know that that is what is being broken down to. It's adverse, sorry. It's adverse. What am I doing? I mixed, okay. It's adverse. This adverse here is bigger than the favorable, so it's adverse. So whenever you want to check if you are correct, it is the direct material usage variance that is going to be used to check the accuracy. Now that we've done mix and yield variance, okay, look at the alternative method here. This is the alternative method that I was looking at. Let's look at the alternative method here. Actual quantity in actual mix. That's what we did before. Actual quantity in standard mix, mix variance. Standard quantity in standard mix. I think actual quantity, actual mix. Okay, so we can rewrite this thing again. Can write this formula again. So we can say direct material usage variance. The formula is standard quantity, standard price minus actual quantity, standard price, which is the same thing as saying standard price, standard quantity minus actual quantity. Now, we'll say, let's see here, yield, then mix, mix and yield. I would like to take mix, the yield first, then I'll take the yield second. So we can say yield, then mix. Still standard price, standard price. This is standard quantity, standard mix. As said here, standard quantity, standard mix, and actual quantity, standard mix minus actual quantity, standard mix. Whereas here is actual quantity, standard mix minus actual quantity, actual mix. So that's how to do this. Standard quantity, standard mix. Actual quantity, standard mix. The standard quantity, actual quantity, standard mix, actual quantity, actual mix. So if you can remember that, then that's it. So this is that example with this is our actual quantity, actual mix. The whole thing we got in the actuals is actual quantity, standard, actual mix, 210. Now this is standard price. This is the standard cost or standard price. All of them use the same standard price. This is what we are getting. Then, if we are to look at standard quantity, standard mix, so it means that you need to first of all do your standard mix, your standard quantity. You do your standard mix. If we are to use standard mix, okay, maybe we should see a question. So that's what we did here. Actual quantity standard mix with actual quantity actual mix gives us mix variant. Standard quantity standard mix with actual quantity standard mix give us yield. Okay, maybe we should use practice question 2. We should use that same method for practice question 2. So let's adopt this method in question number 2. They say calculate the direct mix and yield variance using the line by line method. The line by line method, still the same thing here. Let me see what they mean by line method. Let's see what they mean by line method. Okay, so that's it. So let's look at it here. Let's say practice question 2. Practice question 2. Now we'll first of all do the direct material usage variance so that we'll be getting acquainted with it. Direct material usage variance. This is not asked, it is not required, but sometimes in an exam question you need to calculate this and then I say break it down. We said direct material usage variance is standard quantity standard price minus actual quantity standard price, which is the same thing as saying standard price standard quantity minus actual quantity. Okay, so we have how many materials? X and Y. Now say let me say these are materials, and I'll say standard price. I'll say this is standard quantity. This is, let me not put the standard price first. I will say standard quantity. This is actual quantity. This is variance. This is standard price. And this is variance. So that's how we are going to do it. It's best done in a table. This is X. This is Y. It's best done in a table like this. Our final answer will be here. Standard quantity, we are told this is, okay, this is practice question 2, right? Okay, is it a standard question? Okay, let's do it this way now. 12, 18, 12, 18. Show the solution. Okay, 12, 18. This is 12 because this is 18. And just come here and put 30. Standard quantity. Um, Once again, how many was produced? 2000, sorry, 72 liters. 72 liters was produced. 72 units was produced. So I will just come here and I will say multiply by 72. I will multiply by 72. I should have done it little so that I will get an equal to. Don't need to put this 30 again here. I can say 12 is 18 times 72 times 72 equal to, so this 12 times 72, 864. So this is 864. While the other one is 18 times 72. What did I do? 1296. 1296. What is the actuals? 984 1230. 984 984 1230. So what's the variance? 1296 minus 1230. That gives you 66. So this is 66 already. Then this is 864 minus 984. That gives me 120. What are their prices? Prices is 250, 300. 250, 300. This is 250, 300. So I already have minus 120 times 250. I have 30,000. Is 30,000 adverse. And I have 66 times 300, 19.8 favorable. 19.8 favorable. This is line by line. So I have 19.8 minus 30. I have 10,200 adverse. This is 10,200 adverse. Okay. Now that we know that this is total direct material usage variance. Don't forget, usage variance is different from price variance. Price variance does not have mix and yield, it's only usage. Now let's go to I want to say yield and mix. Yield and mix variance. I say it that way because I'm going to calculate yield first before mix. So we need to get this is materials, then this is standard quantity, and this is our standard mix. So this is X, this is Y. Okay, our X, we had 12 and we have 18. Total is 30. Standard mix here is 12 over 30. This is 18 over 30. And we said 12 divided by 30 gives us 0.4, which is like 0.4, or which is 40%. Here is 0.6, which is like 60%. So that's your standard mix. That's your standard mix. Okay. Then actual mix. So this actual quantity, here. If you want to look at actual quantity and actual mix, this is 9841230. 9841230. We are totaling them. 984 plus 1230 gives me 2214. This is 2214. So this is like saying actual mix is 984 over 2214. This is 1230 over 2214. So let's see the actual mix. So this is 984 divided by 2214. That gives us 0.44. 0.44. While the other one is 1230 divided by 2214. This is 0.56. 0.56. So if you look at it, 0.56 plus 0.44, that gives us 1. So that's it. So now, if we are to do yield variance, we said normally we start with standard price, standard quantity, standard mix minus actual quantity, standard mix. So that's what we are going to do now. We'll start with material. We'll now say standard quantity. What is the standard quantity we had here? Now, question, our standard quantity here let me see what has happened here. Okay, okay. This material X and material Y. The standard mix here 0.4, 0.6, 0.4, 0.6. That's the standard mix which we are using. Then the standard quantity. What's the standard quantity? Look at actual quantity here. Look at actual quantity. Actual quantity was 2,214. So actual quantity standard mix, we'll be looking at 0.4 multiplied by 2214. That gives us 885.6 here. 885.6. Then you will come here, 2214 multiplied by 0.6, that gives me 1328.4. 1328.4. Trying to see what was gotten here as 21. Okay, 2160. Let's see that 2160 came. 72 units. Okay, 72 units. 72 units. Just a moment. Just a moment. So here, standard quantity should be 30 liters times 72 units, which give us 30 multiplied by 72. That gives us 2160. So that is 2160. That is 2214. So let me put them in the same line. So this is for 2160. We are taking them 0.6, 0.4. This is what we will get. To multiply by 0.4, you get 864 as usual. 864, which is what we got the other time here. 864. And if we multiply 2160 by 0.6, that gives you 1296. 1296. So this is standard quantity, standard mix, actual quantity, standard mix. This is variance. So what we have here, we have 1296, let's minus 1328.4. That gives you 32.4. We have minus 32.4. Then we have here 864 minus 885.6. That gives you minus 21.6. Minus 21.6. Then we have our standard price. I think this should be 250. This should be 300. Okay, so these are in liters. So that's why we got our price per liter. Okay, so our variance now will be, we have 21.6 already here, multiplied by 250. This should give me minus 54. That's 5,400 adverts. 5,400 adverts. This line by line. Then we have 32.4 multiplied by 300. That gives you 9,720. 9,720, still adverse. So adverse and 54,000. This gives me 15,120 adverse. 15,120 adverse as we got before. So that's your yield variance. Then your mix variance We are going to do it this way. We said it's still going to be standard price, standard quantity minus actual quantity. Let's see what was done here. Actual quantity in standard mix. Okay. Okay. I think I'm doing something here. This, I need to change this again. I need to change this again. This should be, here we use actual quantity standard mix. So we'll come here and use actual quantity standard mix. This actual quantity actual mix. That's what we'll do here. Actual quantity standard mix, actual quantity actual mix. So we'll start, this is material, this is standard mix, this is actual mix. This is X, this is Y. Standard mix here is 0.4, that is 0.6. Actual mix here is 0.44, and here is 0.56. I think that's what we established. Then we have actual quantity standard mix. So let's derive that. Actual quantity here is 2214. Standard mix here should make it 2214, 2214 multiplied by 0.4 should give you 885.6. So here is 885.6. 885.6. And the same thing here. Here is 2214 multiplied by 0.6. 1328.4. 1328.4. 1328.4. Then we have actual quantity, actual quantity, actual mix. Of course, actual quantity, actual mix was given to us. This is just, we don't even need to put this here. We just need to go and take all these things that was done here. Because if we are to say actual quantity, actual mix, let's do it now. Let's do it. Actual quantity, actual mix. This is 2214. If we say 2214 multiplied by 0.44, I don't want us to put this fraction 974.16, but we have been given that it is, how did we get that again? 984 divided by 2214. That gives us, okay, we would have just used this whole fraction and multiply by 2214. That would have given us that 986. Instead of using 0.44 to multiply by 2214, 2214, we are getting something lower. So that's why I said don't even multiply by the standard mix, by the actual mix. Just go and put what you have in that question, 984 and 1230. This is 1230. Okay, so this is the variance. Variance here, 885.6 minus 984. That gives you 98.4 minus 98.4. Of course, this is selling price. This is 250. Let's just do it straight. Multiply by 250. That gives you 24,600. 24,600 adverse. And let's see this. The 1328.4 minus 1230. That gives you 98.4. 98.4. This is 300 multiplied by 300. That gives you 29,520. 29,520 favorable. Now this is favorable minus 24,600. That gives you 4,920. So that is 4,920 favorable. So that's what we have gotten. So now we say direct material usage variance equals to yield plus mix. The mix is 4,920 favorable. The yield happened to be 15,120 adverse. 15,120 adverse. So favorable minus adverse. That gives us 10,200 adverse. 10,200 adverse, which is what we did when we did the direct material usage variance. So it will take a little practice for us to get the hang of it. To take a little practice. Now, before we go into sales, volume, and mix variances, let's look at a past question here. November 2016, question 5. We have here, Okeke and Sons produces a new petroleum additive called EPBC, used in increasing petrol engine efficiency while at the same time reducing its fuel consumption. The actual and budgeted quantities in liters of materials required to produce EPBC and the budgeted price of the materials in October 2016 are as follows. Now, in place of material XYZ or WXYZ, we have EChem, PROChem, BEChem, and CHAMOChem. Look at the actual quantities and prices in liters. Look at the actual quantities at the actual price. Look at the budgeted quantity. Look at the budgeted price. Now, you are required to calculate the individual chemical and the total direct material price and usage variances. Okay, so let's do that now. Let's do that now. 2016 question 5. November 2016 question 5. ICAM past question November 2016 question 5. All right, so the name of the company is Okeke and Sons. So this is Okeke and Sons. So we want to produce variances. We want to do direct material price and usage variance. Direct material price and usage variances. Okay, so we know that direct material variance, we know it as standard quantity, standard price minus actual quantity, actual price. Okay, of course, this standard quantities for actual production. Now, we now said direct material usage variance is standard quantity, standard price minus actual quantity, standard price, which is the same thing as standard price, standard quantity minus actual quantity. That's for usage. Then direct material price variance is actual quantity standard price minus actual quantity actual price, which is the same thing as actual quantity um, standard price minus actual price. Now with this as our guidance, let's look at direct material usage variance. So direct material usage variance, which I say is DMUV. So we are going to look at materials, materials. We are going to look at standard quantity. Okay. So when we say standard quantity is for actual production, then we look at actual quantities, then we look at variance, then we look at the selling price, then the variances again. Right? So we start materials, we have EC, PC, BC, and CC. EPBC. Let's call it that way. EC, BC, for lack of space, BC, BC, and CC. Let's call it that way for lack of space. Let's look at their prices because we can get standard price 20, 45, 15, 30. 20, 45, 15, 30. So this is 20, 45, 15, and 30. So that's it. Then we look at the actual quantities. You can get it easily. Actual quantities. This is 48, 160, 48, 160, 48, 160, 30, 960, 30, 960, 72, 240, 72, 240. Then we have 2640, 2640, 2640. Okay, now that we have that, so these are our standard, these are our actual quantity. This is the budgeted quantity. We are going to use this now. We are going to use it. 5400, 5400, 33,600, 33,600, 62,700, then 16,800, 16,800. All right, let's calculate the individual variance. So we have 50,400 minus 48,160, and that gives us 2240, 2240. Okay, now when you multiply 2240 by 20, that gives me 44,800, 44,800. Favorable. Do the next one. 33,600 minus 30,960, that is 2640, 2640 multiplied by 45, multiplied by 45, that gives us 118,800. Another favorable. All right, then we have 62,700 minus 72,240, that gives us 9,540, 9,540. Now if we are multiplying it by 15, multiplied by 15, that gives us 143,100. Adverse. Then we have here 16,800 minus 2640. That gives us minus 3840. Now, when you multiply that by 30, multiply by 30, you are getting 115,200. That's adverse. So you total it. So I already have my adverse here. This one, I will go up. So I'll say minus 143, 100. I'll say plus 118, 800 plus 44, 800. 94, 700 is adverse. So your direct material usage variance, and that's it. Then we have direct material price variance, which I call DMPV. So we say DMPV is actual quantity standard price minus actual quantity actual price, which is broken down to actual quantity standard price minus actual price. So what we will now do here is go here and do it. These are material. We have EC, BC, BC, and and CC and CC. I think that's what we did. EP, EPB, and C. Okay, since the quantities are the same, prices are different, we will now check standard price, actual price, now put variance, then actual quantity, then we'll put our variance again. So that's how we are going to do it. All right, so we can say standard price, we don't have the start, okay, 20, 45, 15, 30. 20, 45, 15, 30. 20, 45, 15, and 30. Now, what is the actual price? 25, 47, 14, 30. 25, 47, 14, 30. 25, 47, 14, 30. 25, 47, 14, 30. Then the actual quantities is as stated here. 4816, 4816, 3960. Here is 3960, 72,240, 72,240. Then the next one is 2640. 2640. So this is 2640. Of course, here the variance here is nil here. The variance here is 1. I can give it out straight away. This multiplied by this quantity will still give you nil. This one will give you 72,240 favorable. Let me write this well. 72,240 favorable. Now this will give you -2. And this will give you -5. So let's do them. So say 5, that's -5 multiplied by 4816. So that gives me 2480. 2480 is adverse. And let's look at the second one. 2, that's -2 multiplied by 3960. That will give me 61,920. 61,920, and that's adverse. So let's add them. Adverse here, I will also minus the other adverse, 24080. Okay. Then I will plus the favorable, 72,240. Now that gives me 13,760 adverse. 13,760 adverse. That's adverse. So this is your direct material price variance. So this is your direct material price variance. If you want to do it direct material variance total, you will now come here and say material. You will now say price variance usage variance total variance. So this is EC, is it P? Yes, PC, BC, and CC. Now the price variance is the total here. All right, so let's look at the price variances we have. 2480. This is 24080. We have 61,920. Then we have 72,240. And another one is dash. Then 13,760. 13,760 adverse. Okay. Then the usage 44,800 is favorable. 118,800. Then we have 143,100. And the last one, 115,200. And it gave us a total of how many? 94,700. All right. So we can now do the total line by line. So we can say 24,080, which is an adverse, I'll put a minus, plus 44,800, which is favorable, gives me 20,720. 20,720 favorable. Now look at the next one. 61,920 is an adverse, plus 118,800 gives us 56,880 favorable. 56,880. 56,880 favorable. Then the next one here is 72,240, that's favorable, minus the adverse 143,100. That gives us 70,860 adverse. 70,860. 70,860 adverse. The year, of course, is 115,200 adverse. So let's add. This is adverse here. 70,860. I will now say minus 115,200. Now plus 56,880 plus 2720. That gives us 108,460 adverse. 108,460. 108,460 adverse. Now, this plus this is supposed to give us this. So let's check if it is true. Now, if I were to plus, if I to this thing in my figure, if I to plus this, it should give us the other one. If I say plus 94,700, gives us 13,760. So that means we are correct. So this is our price, this is our usage, this is our total variance. Now we've answered, calculate the individual chemical and total direct price usage variance. Individual and total price and usage. So in this case here, we had calculated the individual price, individual usage, and the total and the total. We are not asked to calculate this. This last one we did here, we are not asked to calculate this, but we just did that for learning sake. Now the second part of the question says, calculate the individual and total direct material yield and mix variance. Direct material mix and yield variance. So we'll come here, direct material. Of course, we'll say usage, mix, and yield, variance. All right, so we need to know our standard quantity. So we start here, material, EC, PC, BC, and CC. This is budget quantity. Budget quantity, let's take it directly from here. 5,400, 5,400, 33,600, 33,600, 67,200, 67,200, 16,800, 16,800. So when we total it, what are we having? Let's total them here. 5,400 plus 33,600 plus 67,200 plus 16,800. That gives us 168. So that's 168 here. 168, 168,000. So your standard mix should give you 5,400 divided by 168,000. This is 33,600 divided by 168,000. This is 67,200 divided by 168,000. And this is 16,800 divided by 168,000. Because this is 0.1. So let's do the others. We have 5,400 divided by 168,000. That gives you 0.3. 0.3. The next one, 33,600 divided by 168,000. 0.2. The other one should be 0.4. 67,200 divided by 168,000. 0.4 like I predicted. So if we are to add everything, it should give us 1. That's your standard mix. And we said our yield variance should be standard price, standard quantity, standard mix minus actual quantity standard mix. So your standard quantity standard mix is this. So what we now do here is, this is material, this is BC, no, EC, this is your EC, PC, BC, and CC. Okay, so we have our standard mix here. Our standard mix here is 0.3, 0.3, 0.2, 0.2, 0.4, 0.1. So that's your standard quantity, standard mix. I think that's what we did before. Let's just check. Standard quantity, standard mix. That's for yield. Standard quantity, standard mix. And this is what we get here. Standard quantity, standard mix. Of course, is those figures we have here. This is 5400, 33, 600, 67, 200, and 16,800. You total them here is 168,000. Now we are to do actual quantity standard mix. Now our actual quantity standard mix. Let's go to the question. Our actual quantity. So let's do something here. This is 168,000. Now, can we calculate this total here to get actual quantity? We have 48, 160 plus 30, 960 plus 72, 240 plus 20, 640. This gives us 172 here. 172,000. So that's what we are going to put here. But we're not going to put these quantities because these are at actual mix. We want them in standard mix. So we'll come here, 172,000. We want to get them in standard mix, we'll be using 0.3 of 172. So that's what it's saying. 172 times 0.3, that will give me 51,600. 51,600. If I divide by 3 and multiply by 2, I'm getting 0.2 here, which is 34,400. So it means 0.2 multiplied by 172 will give you this. I had to use a different way. If I multiply this by 2, I'm getting that of 0.4, which is 68,800. It means that if I do 0.4 times 172, I will get this. I'm just trying to be faster. Now, if I divide this by 4, I will get for 0.1, which is 17.2. 17,200. So if we are to add all of this, 17.2 plus 68,800 plus 34,400 plus 51,600, we have our 172. So this is your actual quantity here at your standard mix. This is your standard mix. This is your standard quantity at your standard mix. So of course we are going to minus it. So these are variance. Then we are going to put our standard price. Then there's another variance. All right, what's our standard price? Let's look at them. 20, 45, 15, 30. 20, 45, 15, 30. Okay, so now let's do. We start with I have 172 in my calculator here. Let me just put minus on it. Plus, oh no, I won't be doing that. I won't be doing that. I want to clear of this. All right. 50, 400 minus 51, 600. That gives you 1, 2 minus 1, 2. So I'll say minus 1, 2 multiplied by 20 times 20 gives you 24,000 adverse. 24,000 adverse. Sorry, it's supposed to be 3 zeros. Adverse. All right. The second one, 33, 600 minus 34, 400. That gives you minus 800. So I have minus 800 multiplied by 45 times 45. That gives me minus 36. That's 36,000 adverse. 36,000 adverse. Then the third one, 67, 200 minus 68, 800 gives you minus 16. Minus 16 multiplied by 15. Multiplied by 15, that gives you minus 24. The same thing as 24,000 adverse. Then we have here 16,800 minus 17,200. That gives you minus 400. 400 times 30 times 30. That gives you 12,000 adverse. 12,000 adverse. Everything here was adverse. 12,000. Now include the 24,000. Include the 36,000. Include 24,000. That gives us 96,000 adverse. This is 96,000 adverse. So that's your variance, yield variance. Let's go to mixed variance. Direct material usage mixed variance. So we are going to be using actual quantity for standard mix and actual quantity actual mix. So of course, standard price will still remain. So we have material, we have EC, PC, BC, and CC. We have actual quantity standard mix, which we have here as 51,600. We have 51,600, 34,400, 34,400, 68,800, 68,800, 17,200. 17,200. Everything will give me 172,000. So this is your actual quantity at your standard mix, because we got use our standard mix to calculate this. Then we have our actual quantity, actual mix, and that's what is given to us in the question. 48,160, 48,160. We have 30,960, 30,960. 72,240, 72,240. 2640, 2640. That should give us another 172,000, because we already calculated it 172. The price is still 20, 45, 15, 30. 20, 45, 15, 30. So that's here standard price 20, 45, 15, and 30. 20, 45, 15, 30. All right, so this is our variance. And this is going to be our variance. So we have naira sign, and naira sign. All right, let's do them one by one. We'll have the first one here, 51,600 minus 48,160. We have 3440, 3440. Now multiply that by 20. Multiplied by 20, we have 68,800. Favorable. 68,800. Favorable. Okay. The next one is 34,400 minus 30,960. We have 3440. 3440. Now multiply this by 45. You have 154,800. 154,800. Favorable. The third one, 68,800 minus 72,240 gives us minus 3440. Minus 3440. Not as much. Multiplied by 15. That gives us minus 51,600. 51,600 adverse. I'm guessing what this other one will be. 17,200 minus 2640. I guess that's much. Minus 3440. Are you seeing a pattern here? Multiplied by 30. 103,200. 103,200 adverse. So when you add them together here, we have 103,200 adverse already, minus 51,600 plus 154,800 plus 68,800. That gives us 68,800 favorable. 68,800 favorable. Now that we've done it, if we want to check if we are correct, we will say check. And this is material. This is AC, BC, BC, and CC. Can come here and say this is your direct material price variance. This is your direct material usage variance. Oh, sorry. Yes, this usage variance, if you like. This is usage variance. You can come here and say this is direct material mix, direct material yield. Now we are only concerned about this, this, and this. That's what we are only concerned. But this is a nice way to put all your answers in one table. This is mixed variance 68,800. This is 68,800F. This is 154,800. 154,800 favorable. 51,600 adverse. This is 51,600 adverse. And this is 103,200 adverse. 103,200 adverse. Okay, then your other variance 24,036, 2412. So this is 2436, 24, and this is 24, 36, 24, and this is 12. So we are going to be doing something here. We want to derive our usage variance by adding these two and checking if it gave us the same answer as what we did before. Okay, so if we have 68,800 favorable and we take away 24,000 adverse, that gives us 44,800 favorable. This is 44,800 favorable. We are going to check if we have 154,800 minus 36,000. That gives us 118,800. So this is 118,800 favorable. If we say 51,600, which is adverse, minus 24,000 adverse, 75,600. We have our 75,600 adverse. If we have 103,200 as an adverse minus 12,000 adverse, 115,200. 115,200 adverse. So let's get the total. 115,200 adverse minus 75,600 600 adverse plus 118,800 favorable plus 44,800 favorable. That gives me 27,200 adverse. 27,200 adverse. Let's check if that is correct. Let's see. 68,800 favorable here. This is 68,800 favorable. This was 96 adverse. 96,000 adverse. If I were to say minus 96,000, I'll be sorry. If I were to say 27,200, that's adverse, plus 68,800. There's a mistake somewhere. I should be getting 41,600. Let's check again. Maybe I'm not doing something well here. 68,800 minus 24,000. That's 44,800. 154,800 minus 36,118. That's fine. 51,600 minus 24. 75,600 adverse. 102, 103, 200 adverse minus 12,000. 115,200 minus 75,600 plus 118,800 plus 44,800. 72. Okay, that's fine. 72. All right, 72, 27,200. That's fine. If I were to say 68,800 minus 96,000, yeah, it's correct. So if I would check my usage variance, if I got 27,200, it means I was correct. There's a problem here. Something that was not right. This is the usage variance. Okay, this is supposed to be usage variance 44,800. 44,800, yes. 118,800, yes. 143,100. Okay, we'll come back to that. And the other one, 115,200. 115,200. Okay, so it's here that is the problem. BC. Let's see what we did in BC. Usage variance. BC, let's see mix and yield. Mix variance. Check it again. 68,800 minus 72,240. That gives me this. And multiplied by 15, I got 51,600. Okay, 5016. Okay, 5016. Let me look at the yield again. 67,200 minus 68,800 minus 16 and multiply by 15, not 24. I'll leave it like that. So that's your answer right there. So we have been able to establish how to do mix and yield variance. This is an advanced variance, mix and yield variance, and is gotten from direct variance, direct material variance. In our next class, we are going to be looking at sales volume, mix, and quantity variance. Now that's almost like mix and yield variance for direct materials. When we look at that, then we'll go to look at something called the planning and operational variance. Then after that, we'll take a question from the past question, and that will be all for our class for variance. So thank you so much for this part of the variance that we have done today. So see you in our next class where the sales volume and mix and quantity variances will be our area of focus. So thank you so much. See you later.